Time magazine actually called our bank governor one of the most influential people in the entire world. He's the 21st most influential person in the entire world. This is what chief economist for TD Bank had to say, Craig Alexander, on CTV News last Friday. He said that the choice of Governor Carney reflects the strength of the Canadian financial system, because Governor Carney is an outstanding candidate and it is a part-time position, so don't worry, Canada. He can do it in addition to being governor of the Bank of Canada. No conflict of interest there. Because when you look at his background, it suggests that he's an ideal candidate. He understands, of course, the economic and financial links, because he has worked for Goldman Sachs for 14 plus years as a chief executive officer. It's going to give him a good sound perspective, says Craig Alexander from TD Bank, on what regulatory environment makes sense. And I know that he will do an outstanding job. Why is CTV News asking TD Bank executive, chief economist Craig Alexander, what he thinks about Mark Carney's elevated position into this new international system? Why are they asking this guy? So let it be known that Fat Cat does not think it's a good idea to have a former Goldman Sachs executive, a company that has been charged with fraud countless times and is largely responsible for cooking the books in Greece, responsible for the biggest financial crisis Europe has ever faced and the turmoil that Greek citizens are in today. This is the same company our Bank of Canada governor was once employed by for almost 2 decades. Now, Mark Carney has been elevated to the Financial Stability Forum, formerly the Financial Stability Board. The guy who he replaced is named Mario Draghi, who replaced no one. He was the very first chief of the Financial Stability Forum. He also worked for Goldman Sachs and was also involved in cooking the books directly, leading to, as we know, the Greek financial meltdown, the Greek financial crisis today. So here we have two guys, both of whom are responsible for the finances of the world, and they're both employees of a private company named Goldman Sachs. Mario Draghi, as well as Mark Carney, Canadian rock star on hero extraordinaire to the financial system. No wonder this guy is getting elevated to the heights of finances in the world. Look at what he is doing to Canada. Look at what our fractional reserve system is doing to jobs in this country. 50,000 plus people just lost their full-time jobs in Canada last month, in the last 30 days alone. Aww. So what is this Financial Stability Board? Well, it's a subsidiary of the Bank of International Settlements. It's a bank for international bankers. And in fact, it is the bankers' bank. It is the bank that bankers go to regulate themselves. It is entirely privately controlled. It is not accountable to any national government on earth, and it is based in Switzerland. Let me tell you some more. It was created by Adolf Hitler's finance minister, Hjalmar Schacht. Other members of the BIS over the years include Nazis Walter Funk, Emil Pool, both of whom were convicted for murdering as top-level Nazis at the Nuremberg trials at the end of World War II. Also involved in the BIS, Baron von Schroeder, owner of the Gestapo's own private bank. Now, get this, the governor of the Bank of Canada, the Canadian rock star banking official, let's celebrate it, guys, has now been elevated to a position where he is intermingling with the Gestapo's bank, with the Nazis' bank, with the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, a private organization. He is now answering to them. Maybe he's always been, but now he's in an incredible position of power. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as this show is concerned, this is a treasonous position. It's kind of like Obama, President of the United States of America, is also the head chief for the United Nations Security Council. These two things are not mutually exclusive. You can't answer to the United Nations body as President Obama and answer to the Congress of the people of the United States of America. This is treason. These people are traitors. Mark Carney is a traitor to the Canadian people. He cannot hold these two positions. He cannot be accountable to Hitler's bank, set up by Hjalmar Schacht, worked together with the Gestapo, setting up this Bank of International Settlements, and now he's part of the Financial Stability Forum, previously the Financial Stability Board, which in itself is a subsidiary of the BIS, this Hitler's bank. We cannot have someone in charge of the financial system of the Canadian people, the Bank of Canada, which controls the issuance of our money, and we can still take back this power. We cannot have someone in charge of this bank that is kowtowing to an international financial body, rock star though he may be. We cannot have someone who is both part of the BIS and leader of the Bank of Canada. We must begin issuing our own money and take the power away from the banking system to create debt through the fractional reserve system. Of interest, before we move along to our next segment here, President Roosevelt almost had the Bank of International Settlements liquidated at the Bretton Woods Conference in July 1944. And our favorite guy, John Maynard Keynes, showed up and through some fancy political activism stopped this shutdown from happening. Unfortunately, as history records, President Roosevelt shortly died thereafter, and President Truman, who replaced him, suspended the dissolution, and in 1948, the decision to shut down the Bank of International Settlements for all its corruption and its links to the Nazis and the Gestapo and Adolf Hitler was officially reversed. So now we know all about this Mark Carney character whose evil is steeping into the very essence and fabric of our fine nation of Canada through the governorship of the Bank of Canada. But what about his leader? What about our penultimate political representative embodied by Stephen Harper, Prime Minister of Canada? What do we know about Stephen Harper? Check this out.
Best propaganda.
The world judged the Iraqi regime was a dangerous aggressor. In the interests of world peace and regional security, the community of nations required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal, its chemical and biological weapons, and abandon its nuclear weapons program. Iraq agreed to comply.
The world judged the Iraqi regime to be a dangerous aggressor. In the interests of world peace and regional security, the community of nations expelled Iraq from Kuwait, required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal, its chemical biological weapons, and to abandon its nuclear weapons program. Iraq agreed to comply. Iraq's continued defiance of the community of nations presents a challenge which must be addressed.
Presents a challenge which must
The
be
member for
addressed.
Grindler.
It is inherently
dangerous to allow a country such as Iraq
to retain weapons of mass destruction,
particularly in light
in the
of its
light
past aggressive
of
behavior.
its past aggressive behaviour.
That's right.
If the world community fails to disarm Iraq, we fear that other rogue states will be encouraged to believe that they too can have these weapons, these most deadly of weapons, to systematically defy international resolutions, and that the world will do nothing to stop them. That is the ultimate nightmare which the world must take decisive and effective steps to prevent.
Possession of chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons by terrorists would constitute a direct, undeniable